Here to talk about all this is Alex Epstein, founder and CEO of Center for Industrial Progress and author of the great book, Fossil Future. Alex, when you hear this talk about a climate emergency, what do you think?
It really scares me because they're referring to something that isn't real, but then they're going to do enormous damage on the basis of it. So when you hear these questions about, okay, is this the new normal, you have to actually be clinical and objective and look at the trends. And so I think the number one trend that's important with climate is deaths. And what we have is a precipitous decline in climate-related disaster deaths.
Well, you actually,
So
forgive me for
floods.
interrupting, but you actually put out a tweet about a week ago saying, quoting from a 2004 article in The Guardian, which says climate change over the next 20 years, and of course we're 20 years from the time this was written, could result in a global catastrophe costing millions of lives in wars and natural disasters. That sounds pretty scary, pretty catastrophic. But then you actually look at the numbers. And if you can put up the chart there that you accompanied your tweet with, climate-related disaster deaths have gone down precipitously over the past few decades. So it's going in the opposite direction of what they say it's going.
Yeah, and the dynamic is pretty clear, which is whatever changes are happening in the climate are trivial compared to the vast increase in humanity's ability to master climate danger. So to neutralize storms and floods, extreme heat, extreme cold, drought is actually the biggest climate-related killer. Things like irrigation and crop transport. So when people act like we're in a climate emergency, and yet we've never been safer from climate ever, they're distorting reality. And then the question is, what are they trying to do? Well, distorting reality. And
it has to do with that word behind you, fossil futures. It's all about fossils. And just to throw in another example, the Hawaii fires, the horrible, deadly Hawaii fires, which immediately everybody said was part of this climate disaster, the climate emergency that we're in, turned out not to have to do a lot with the climate. I mean, obviously the winds blew the fires, but what started the fires was very poor forest management, and also the horrible work that had been done by the electric company there. So, I mean, again, they misdiagnose everything in order to pursue their attempts to get rid of fossil fuels.
And it's so destructive because fossil fuels are what enable us to be so safe from climate. So take the situation in Hawaii. Nobody really knows exactly what affects a global rise in CO2 levels that's corresponded with 2 degrees Fahrenheit rise over the last 150 years. No one has any idea what exactly specifically happened in Hawaii, how that affects it. But we know it's minor compared to the human variables, namely really bad forest management, which they deprioritized, they defunded compared to any other state. I mean, they have a small fraction of funding for active wildfire management, things like clearing grasses, invasive grasses that they really needed to clear. They didn't maintain power lines properly. They're spending a fortune on green energy, but not on maintaining power lines, which are a huge ignition source. And then their whole firefighting department is deprived of water. And one of the officials there says that we should revere water and not for human use. We should just revere it. So it's all green policies that are preventing us from exercising our proven ability to master climate. And what Biden wants to do is rapidly eliminate fossil fuels, which means we're not going to have the energy to keep ourselves safe from climate or to live good lives in any other respect. So he's already taken totally illegitimate executive power without declaring an emergency. Imagine what this guy with explicit emergency powers, given what we saw with COVID, it just makes him an indefinite dictator.
Well, just imagine what he has done. As you say before, of course, the first thing he did was cut out pipelines, oil and gas pipelines that we had going. But now he has new moves out to reduce the amount of oil that we get from the Gulf oil, which is one of the cleanest fossil fuels that we have around other than natural gas, is the oil that we get from the Gulf of Mexico. And we could get a McKinsey study, just came out recently, a few months ago, actually, showing that we could get an extra 1 to 2 million barrels per day from the Gulf of Mexico. Again, low carbon burning oil. It's much cleaner than what we're getting from Venezuela or even from Saudi Arabia, and we could get much more of it, but we're not for reasons unknown to most people.
Yeah, unfortunately, they're known to me. and I talk about this a lot in Fossil Future, it's the goal of this movement is not getting more energy in a cleaner way. It's having less impact on the planet. And so there's a deep hostility toward energy as such, because energy enables human beings to impact the planet a lot. So this focus on, oh, it's clean or it's not, that's a side issue.
Yeah.
The leaders of this movement are just hostile to human beings having a lot of energy. And so naturally, they target fossil fuels, nuclear and hydro, even though nuclear and hydro are carbon free, because they have a hostility toward energy as such. They're also targeting solar and wind, which involve a huge amount of impact on Earth. So it's really an anti-energy movement masquerading as a clean energy movement.
Wonderful way to put it. Thank you very much, Alex Epstein. Good to see you again, my friend.